This is a summary of my main biomedical artist newsletter, which is dedicated to what I have been doing and learning in May about the role of ballet in mental health, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. It is also Stress Awareness Month and Better Sleep Awareness Month, and ballet is excellent for mental health and for anxiety and stress management and for better sleep. And this time I decided to delve in more details how ballet is important for learning and especially for memory of a choreography with the processes in the brain, because this will tell us why ballet is good for disorders of learning and memory, how it keeps your memory sharp, and helps to treat neurologic and psychiatric disorders, cognitive disorders such as dementia and autism and depression. And I will focus on a brain area, the striatum, which I'm very much interested in because it's an important area for movement, and I want to understand if it's an important area for memory and how. So I will mention what I learned about the role of striatum in memory, and more specifically declarative memory when learning a choreography, and then procedural memory, which is very important in ballet choreography. Then I will mention some techniques the dancers use to strengthen their procedural memory, which I learned through reading and through my own practice, which I think are also very beneficial for learning about how to keep your memory sharp in general. But this will tell us why ballet is excellent for memory. And then I will mention some techniques that dancers use to improve their memory to learn choreography better. I think that ballet is very beneficial for mental health because besides that it's important for learning and memory, it provides novelty. It's like a vacation because you step away from your everyday life and you're transported into the story of the ballet. And so, like other forms of art, you can leave home without leaving home. And so I will mention briefly this novelty, that it's very good for mental health because it stimulates creativity and reduces stress, and it is beneficial for the senses. So I will also mention in my biomedical artist newsletter the ballets that I have been dancing about butterflies, because butterflies are starting to appear in May. They are excellent symbols of mental health because they symbolize the soul, and dancing butterflies of different colors is very enjoyable, embodying the symbolism of the colors of each butterfly. And I have been learning a new ballet, Ballet, which I have never danced, with music by Ludwig Minkus, very beautiful music, and a touching although a bit tragic story. And so to start, how is declarative memory involved in learning choreography? And I read that the striatum participates in declarative memory from human neuroimaging studies. And declarative memory helps dancers recall sequences, movements, and patterns consciously. And here is how. Explicit recall of steps. It allows the dancers to consciously remember and recall the movement sequences, especially when learning a new choreography, using verbal and visual cues. Many dancers use verbal instructions or mental imagery to reinforce the movement memory, and which rely on declarative memory. Structured learning. This is when the dancers break down the choreography into sections, and the declarative memory helps them to retain the order and transitions between the movements. And besides the declarative memory, I mentioned that the procedural memory plays an important part in ballet. First it is the declarative memory, and then it is turned into procedural, which helps the dancers perform the movements automatically after multiple repetitions, reducing the need for conscious recall. And the striatum is especially important in the procedural memory. Over time, the choreography shifts from the declarative memory, which is the conscious recall, to the procedural memory, which is the automatic execution. This is what I found from the literature. And how the striatum plays a role in procedural memory. It is essential for learning and performing the choreography. The basal ganglia, part of the striatum, are a brain structure involved in motor control, habit formation, and skill learning. And here is how the striatum supports procedural memory and dance. The motor skill learning. The striatum helps the dancers transition from consciously recalling movements, the declarative memory, to performing them automatically. Habit formation. As dancers repeat the sequences, the striatum strengthens the neural pathways, making the movements more fluid. Coordination and timing. The striatum assists in refining the movement precision and synchronizing the steps with the music. And in these functions, the striatum interacts with other brain regions, namely the cerebellum, which is involved in the coordination of movements, and the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in the planning and the decision making. And science studies suggest that the dorsomedial striatum is involved in the early learning phases, and then the dorsolateral striatum takes over as the movements become more automatic. And Now, I would like to share some techniques that dancers use to strengthen the procedural memory, the automatic performing of the choreography. And I think this is also important to know is ways to improve our memory in general. The strengthening of procedural memory is essential for dancers so that they can execute a smooth choreography. First is the repetition in muscle memory, repeating the same movements multiple times. Mental rehearsal and visualization. This is also very important, and imagining the movements in detail helps to activate the same brain regions that are activated when the movements are performed. Isn't this amazing? So in my mind, this shows that dancing and watching ballet have similar effects on mental health. And mentally rehearsing the sequences and watching videos of performances. In cueing and association techniques for improving of the procedural memory, such as auditory cues, beats in the music, associating sequences with words, with counts, and with imagery, and engaging with kinesthetic learning. This is something I like, feeling the movement rather than overthinking it. In slow practice at gradual speed increase, this means that practicing the movements at a slower pace and refining the details so that you memorize them and then you can recall them faster. In cross-training is used by dancers such as yoga and Pilates to improve the coordination in aerobic exercises. And of course, sleep is very important for memory consolidation, so just like other types of memory, to strengthen the procedural memory, the dancers have to sleep. And so I just want to mention something else, how the dancers recover and refine movements when they forget the choreography mid-performance. This happens sometimes. They train their reaction time, which is important to recover quickly and adapt to changes, and to execute the movements with precision. They practice transition between movements, which helps them to sharpen their reflexes, and speed drills, such as responding instantly to music changes. Sensory awareness training, strengthening the peripheral vision and spatial awareness, in training appropriate cues from the music, from the environment, and from other dancers. Improvisation and adaptability. So, if a dancer forgets the choreography mid-performance, they try to improvise and adjust the choreography so that they get back on track. In mirror and partner work, training with partners improves responsiveness and movement cues. And again, cross-training with other forms of exercise such as Pilates and yoga and strengthening the body's ability to respond swiftly in such instances. And mental training is important, developing the ability to visualize possible movement mistakes and how to correct them, and responsiveness to the music cues. And the striatum is involved in the recall of ballet choreography, particularly through its role in the procedural memory and motor learning. And ballet dancers rely heavily on procedural memory to execute movement fluidity. And so I will just conclude with how the striatum supports ballet memory recall. In the motor skill learning, the habit formation, and the coordination and timing. And so I hope that in this summary I showed you some biomedical aspects, how an important brain region for movement and for habit formation and for memory, the striatum is involved in learning the choreography, what techniques the dancers use, and this can make us think why ballet is so amazing to treat disorders of learning and memory, and to mention that by dancing ballet you train your memory and you learn to respond to changes and prevent disorders of memory and learning. Thank you for your time. I welcome your comments.